Hi, I'm Mike Halsey, the author of Troubleshooting Windows 7 Inside Out from Microsoft Press, and welcome to Advanced Windows 7 Troubleshooting. In this webcast, I'm going to be looking at a whole wide variety of tools and facilities within the operating system that you can use for preventing problems, diagnosing problems, and repairing them. I'm going to split this presentation into 4 different parts. In part 1, I'm going to look at some of the tools that you can use to prevent problems from occurring in the first place. These include backup and virtualization tools. In part 2, we'll look at some of the automatic and some of the simple troubleshooting tools that are available in Windows 7 that anybody can use regardless of their technical ability. In part 3, we'll look at some of the more advanced troubleshooting tools and facilities that are available within the operating system. And then in part 4, this will be a demonstration on some of the more advanced diagnostic tools that reside within the operating system itself. But we'll start with avoiding disaster. Now, there are several tools in Windows 7 that you can use to help avoid disasters from occurring. The first of these is Complete PC Backup. This will create a system image, an image of your installed copy of Windows 7 that you can save to another hard disk, another partition on your hard disk, to an external hard disk, or to a series of DVDs. And you can restore from it later. So you can, for instance, install all of your software and install and update Windows and configure it how you want it. And then when you need to restore from this backup, rather than reinstalling the operating system from scratch and doing that all again, you just restore from this backup and then everything is there how you want it all configured. And it's very similar to third-party software such as Acronis True Image or Semantic Ghost. But this is built into every version of Windows 7. It's free, you don't need to buy any additional software. Then there's Windows Update. This is extremely important that you have it turned on and that you let it install critical updates. There are some problems that we'll talk about later that can be caused by Windows Update, but you should let it install important and critical updates. You should also look for recommended and optional updates as well, because these can include new drivers for your hardware and updates for other software such as Microsoft Office. Then there's application compatibility. Now I'm going to talk about this more in part 2, but you can right click on any program in the start menu, and from the context menu that appears select properties, and in there there'll be a compatibility tab in the window that appears where you can run programs that ran fine in earlier versions of Windows with compatibility settings so that they will run more efficiently and more effectively in Windows 7. But Windows 7 is more compatible with older software than any other version of Windows that has come before it, and there are all sorts of additional compatibility features that you can use, such as Windows XP mode, which you can download free, which is a fully licensed copy of Windows XP that works in a virtual machine, and you can use that if you have Windows 7 Professional or above. But here I want to talk about creating a virtual copy of Windows 7 that you can boot from on your computer. So let's have a look at that. Now, this is essentially creating a file that contains a full copy of Windows 7 with all of your software installed in it that you can boot from. It's not like installing Windows 7 on your hard disk, because it's not a whole series of files scattered around around a drive or partition on your hard disk. It's a single file containing all of that, a virtualized computer. Now, this facility is available in Windows 7 Enterprise and Windows 7 Ultimate only, and you will need a separate license and separate product key for the copy of Windows 7 that you virtualize. Now, the advantages are that you can boot into this virtual machine directly from the startup menu on your computer. It's seamless in this regard. It just appears in the boot menu, and the end user wouldn't know the difference between a virtual machine and an installed copy of Windows 7 on your hard disk. It's easy to repair and it's easy to reinstall as well, because you just boot into the standard copy of Windows 7, which you probably wouldn't be using on your computer, and you could just rename your original backup copy of your virtual machine or create another copy of it, and you can be back up and running in minutes, in literally just a few minutes, for as long as it takes to reboot Windows a couple of times. Now, some of the advantages are, firstly, that unlike Microsoft Virtual PC, the virtual machine will have full access to the hardware resources on your computer, and also it fully supports the 64-bit versions of Windows 7, which is again something the virtual PC does not. Now, there are third-party solutions that offer virtualization where you can run a virtual machine on the desktop, but this will enable you to boot from a virtual machine and you really wouldn't know that you're doing it. It's an excellent facility. Again, as I say, it's in Windows 7 Enterprise and Ultimate only, and there's a full guide to how to do this in Chapter 8 of my book, Troubleshooting Windows 7 Inside Out. So that's it for Part 1. Now we'll have a look at automated troubleshooting. Now that we've looked at some of the ways of backing up and preventing problems with Windows 7, let's have a look at some of the automated ways that we can apply quick fixes. Now, the first of these is the Application Compatibility Assistant. Now, I talked about this briefly in Part 1. Now, Windows 7 is the most compatible version of Windows ever when it comes to older software, but sometimes software still won't work, and as I've said, you can right click on a program in the start menu and change its compatibility settings from the properties inspector for that program. But sometimes when you install a program, you'll see this dialog window that will appear here, where Windows has detected that the program might not have installed properly. Now, it's entirely possible that the program did install properly and Windows has recognised something, that a problem that isn't there, and that you'll never have any problems with it. But it's worth making note of what programs you receive this notice for, so that if you do experience problems in the future, it's useful information that can help you diagnose problems. But what this will do is it'll give you an opportunity for Windows to automatically apply compatibility settings to the program, and it will reinstall it. And this can be a very useful way of being able to prevent problems. Then there are the automatic troubleshooters. Now, these are accessed from the Action Center, which is the little white flag down near the clock on the bottom right of the Windows 7 taskbar. Now, you'll see a link in the Action Center to troubleshooting, and there are a whole range of automatic troubleshooters for just about everything in Windows. But all these automatic troubleshooters will do is reset Windows components to their default state, which is useful in some instances, but not in others. But there are a great many there. But one of the best things about the automatic troubleshooters is that you can add your own. If you can program in XML, then you can write your own automatic troubleshooters to add to this for your own bespoke software or hardware. And in order to be able to do this, you need to get the Windows 7 Software Development Kit, and you'll see in the bin/TSP Designer folder there is a Windows Troubleshooting Pack Designer, and you can use this to build your XML troubleshooters for Windows 7. Then there's Startup Repair. Now, by default, Startup Repair is set to run automatically from your hard disk if Windows fails to boot 3 times. The files are there on the hard disk, but sometimes they may become corrupt themselves and they won't be able to start. But let's now have a look with this video at Startup Repair in a little bit more detail. Windows 7 contains some really useful tools for detecting and automatically repairing problems with Windows 7 startup. By default, these utilities will automatically kick in if Windows fails to boot 3 times, and they'll try and find a repair, but there are other options available to you, and there are several ways to get to them. The easiest way is to press the F8 key on your keyboard before the Windows logo appears but after the BIOS boot screen, and you'll see this menu here. From here you want to select Repair Your Computer. Once in the recovery options, you'll be prompted with a menu, and there are several options to choose from here. Let's go through each one in turn and look at them. Startup Repair runs an automatic troubleshooter that can fix common problems that prevent Windows 7 from starting. System Restore allows you to roll back critical operating system files to an earlier point, perhaps before you've installed a new piece of software, a hardware driver or a Windows update that are causing Windows 7 to malfunction. System Image Recovery allows you to restore the entire operating system from a backup image. You need to create one of these yourself, and I'll talk about how to do this in a minute. The Windows Memory Diagnostic can help detect physical hardware problems with your computer's memory. And the command prompt gives you access to a scripting environment where you can perform advanced recovery and diagnostic operations. In order to perform a system image recovery, you first need to create a backup copy of your Windows installation, which you can do from the control panel. In the System and Security section, you want to click the link Backup Your Computer. In the blue panel on the left hand side, there's an option to create a system image. Now you'll need an external hard drive, another internal hard drive, or a series of DVDs to save this image onto. And you might want to install your software and configure Windows 7 how you want it before you create the image. Just below that is an option to create a system repair disk. You can boot from this CD or DVD and access the recovery console and the system repair options that we looked at a moment ago. While you can choose Repair Your Computer from the advanced boot options in Windows 7 and also use a Startup Repair disk to get straight to the Startup Repair options, you can also get to them through the Windows 7 installation DVD. When you boot from this, you'll be first asked what language you want to install in. Just simply click through this, and at the next screen, instead of pressing the Install Now button, click Repair Your Computer. This will take you to the automated repair options and then the repair menu that we saw earlier. Now, one thing I want to talk about here is the system repair disk. I want to talk about this a little bit more. An important thing to note about the system repair disk is that you have to have 32-bit and 64-bit system repair disks if you are going to be repairing both types of Windows 7 operating system. Now, a 32-bit system repair disk will be created, can only be created, in a 32-bit copy of Windows 7. In exactly the same way as a 64-bit system repair disk can only be created in a 64-bit copy of Windows 7. So, if you're not actually running a 32-bit system yourself, for instance, but you need to repair a 32-bit system, you'll need to create that disk another way. It's one of the more annoying foibles with the startup repair system in Windows 7, but it's an important consideration, and it's well worth having those two disks because they can make access to startup repair much simpler. Well, that's it for part 2, and in the next part we're going to have a look at more advanced troubleshooting. Okay, now let's look at some of the advanced troubleshooting features available in Windows 7. We'll begin with the System File Checker, and there's a full guide to this in Chapter 16 of my book, Troubleshooting Windows 7 Inside Out, because it's just so useful. It's one of the most useful features in the whole operating system. You run it from the command prompt, which you need to run as an administrator, so right-click on the command prompt icon and select Run as Administrator from the context menu that appears. Essentially what this does is it checks all of the files on your hard disk that make up Windows 7 and compares them against the original versions of those files on your installation DVD. If it finds any that have become corrupt or are changed, then it copies the original file back from the DVD, replacing the one on your hard disk and essentially repairing it. It's done through one simple command, which you can see here, sfc /scan now, where scan now is one word. Now there's one caveat with the System File Checker, and that's service packs. If you have Service Pack 1 or Service Pack 2 installed in Windows 7, then you will need an integrated version of that same service pack on your installation DVD. Now there are several ways to do this. Various pieces of software are available online, such as R7 Lite, in order to be able to download these service packs into your installation DVD. Or there are other ways. There's a full guide in the book on how to slipstream a service pack into a Windows 7 installation disk, but it's a bit of a faff. But if you're an enterprise user and you have an MSDN, TechNet or other subscription, you'll probably find that Microsoft will make available an integrated version of your installation DVD anyway that you can download. So the System File Checker is absolutely wonderful, an incredibly useful tool, and a very, very quick and easy way of being able to repair Windows 7. Then there's System Restore. Now, many people wouldn't think of System Restore as an advanced tool, but I've included it here because there's just so many ways to access it these days. You can get to it in the traditional ways through help and through the control panel, but you can also access it directly from Startup Repair, and of course there's 3 different ways to get into Startup Repair as well, as we've seen in the previous part 2. So System Restore is very useful. Viruses can't hide at it in the way they used to be able to with Windows XP, and it's well worth leaving it turned on. Its biggest use, I've found, is actually for rolling back problems caused by Windows updates and driver updates that have come through the Windows Update service itself. When you think about it, Microsoft have got to support billions of PCs, none of which are the same. So you're going to get driver updates and Windows updates that on occasion are going to cause a problem. And it's a great way of being able to roll back through Windows Startup Repair to before those updates were installed. Then there's the Problem Steps Recorder. Now this began life as a tool in the Windows 7 beta just to help beta testers give Microsoft more information on problems with the operating system when it was in testing. And it was so well received that Microsoft bowed to pressure and kept it in the final release of the operating system. Now you won't find it in the management console, you won't find it in the start menu. The way to get to it is to type PSR into the search box in the start menu. So what does the Problem Steps Recorder do? Well, every time you click on something, when you're recording, every time you click on something or every time something changes on the screen, the Problem Steps Recorder will take a screenshot. It will annotate that screenshot to highlight the area of the screen that is changed or the area that has been clicked. In addition to these screenshots, with each one it'll provide information directly under it in text on what's running at the time, what is happening, and it'll provide all sorts of extra useful information. And it will save all these screenshots together with all the text descriptions in essentially a zip file that can be read later, read on a different PC, emailed to a support person, and so on. And it's a wonderful tool for being able to see exactly what it is that a user is doing on their computer when a problem occurs. So again, as I said, you access the Problem Steps Recorder by typing PSR into the search box in the start menu. Now, I'd like to talk a little bit about advanced startup repair. Now, we've looked at the general startup repair options, the automated ones, system restore, system image recovery. But there's a command prompt option available with startup repair, and this is one I want to look at here. Now, there's all sorts of things you can do with the command prompt, especially those of you familiar with DOS commands, but there are some new ones as well. And here is a short video I'd like to look at how we can use this command prompt scripting environment to repair all of the boot files in Windows when Windows itself can't start. Sometimes the boot files that are required for Windows 7 to load become corrupt and need to be repaired. To do this, you'll need either a startup repair CD or your original Windows 7 installation DVD. A Windows startup repair CD or DVD will take you straight into the Windows startup repair options, but if you're running the Windows 7 installation DVD instead, click through the first option where you're asked which language you want to install in, and at the next page, instead of pressing the Install Now button, click the Repair Your Computer link. Once you're presented with the System Recovery Options menu, you'll want to click on Command Prompt. It's here that we'll be able to type the commands we need to rescue the boot files in Windows 7. Once you get to the command prompt, you now need to type the following commands in order to repair the boot files in Windows 7. This first command creates a backup of the Windows 7 boot menu. You can use this command with the import switch later on if you need to restore that backup. Now we need to navigate to the hard disk on which you have Windows 7 installed. In this case we'll assume it's the C drive, though on your computer it might be different. Once on that drive, we need to navigate to the boot menu. Now we need to change the attributes of an important file, BCD, so that we can perform actions on it. This command renames that BCD file to bcd.old to create a backup. You can also rename the .old file back if you need to restore that backup. Finally, we use the bootrec command with the rebuild BCD switch. This rebuilds all the boot files for Windows 7. There are other switches you can use with the bootrec command that you may find helpful. fixmbr can be used to write a new master boot record in Windows 7. fixboot will write new boot sector to the disk. And scanOS can be used to search for any Windows installations on your computer. There's also the bcd edit command, which is used to edit the boot menu. So that's how we can repair corrupt boot files in Windows 7. Now back to the presentation. Okay, now let's have a look at safe mode. Now, most people will be familiar with safe mode, that you can access by pressing the F8 key to get into the boot options after the BIOS screen disappears but before the Windows logo appears when you're starting the computer. Now, safe mode is very limited. It will start the computer without any third-party services, drivers or software running. You have limited networking capability. The screen resolution is set to its lowest. But there is an alternative, and this is the Safe Boot Diagnostic mode. Now, you access this through the System Configuration panel, which you find by typing msconfig, which is one word, into the search box in the Windows 7 Start menu. Now, you'll see under the Boot tab here there is a Safe Boot tick box. If you tick that, we've got several options here. If you select minimal, you'll just get into safe mode as you understand it, but there's different options. Now, by default, just by ticking the safe boot mode, we'll get a boot scenario where you have your full screen resolution, you have driver support, but things like third-party services won't run, and you can perform diagnostics without worrying that things that were normally running in the background will cause problems. When you're finished with safe boot mode, then just remember to untick the box, go back into the system configuration panel and untick the box to get Windows to boot normally after that. Now let's have a look at device drivers. Now I've talked previously a little while ago about how device drivers can cause all sorts of problems. Now there are various things that you can do to troubleshoot device drivers, so let's have a look at them. The first thing is to roll back a driver. Now you can do this by right clicking on the driver itself, selecting properties from the context menu that appears, and if that driver has been upgraded and there is a previous version that's been stored, you can press the roll back driver button in the dialog window that appears. Now if you've only had one driver installed for this device, then it won't allow you to do that. But if you've updated a driver, for instance, and it's causing a problem, you can roll the driver back to the previous version. You'll see here with figure number 2 that if you want to uninstall a device, with some devices, many of them, but not all, you'll see a little tick box here for deleting the driver software for the device. One of the biggest problems with previous Windows versions is that if you had a faulty Windows driver, then when you uninstalled it, the driver would still be there on your hard disk unless you went in and did a fiddly process to remove it manually. And when you go to reinstall, there was a danger that the faulty driver would be reinstalled. Now, if you tick this box, then all of those driver files will be deleted from your hard drive, and there won't be any chance that they can be reinstalled accidentally. Then there's hidden devices, and you'll probably be surprised just how many hidden devices there are in Device Manager. Now, under the View menu in Device Manager, you can select to show the hidden devices, and you'll be able to see many other devices, any of which could be causing a problem with your computer. You can see there are other view types here as well, where you can view devices by connection or resources by type and connection, and it's here where you can also review IRQ assignments within the devices for the operating system itself. Now let's have a look at the blue screen of death. Now, many times when you get a blue screen of death, which is increasingly rare in Windows 7, but does happen, the system will automatically restart before you actually get a chance to look at it and read the information on it. So if you go into the advanced boot options, again, press F8 when the computer's starting, after the BIOS screen disappears but before the Windows logo appears, and select Disable Automatic Restart on System Failure, which is down near the bottom of the list, then when you get a blue screen of death, it will stop on that blue screen of death until you turn the machine off and turn it back on again. So let's have a look at how we actually read the blue screen of death itself. Now there are two pieces of information that you need here, and they're both highlighted here. One of which, the top one, is the error name. The bottom one is the stop error code, and there's more information after this stop error code as well. Now you'll see further down there, just under the stop error code, there's information on an actual driver that has crashed, in this case spcm.dcon.sys, and you'll want that information. That's useful information. But these two main bits of information are your big clue. And with this information, you can look up the blue screen of death online and get more information on it. Now you want to try and get as much information from the blue screen of death as you can, because the one stop error code can cover a whole range of different things, and it's important to have as much information as you can. Okay, so that's the advanced utilities, and in part 4 we're going to have an in-depth look at the power utilities available for troubleshooting Windows 7. Okay, now in this part we're going to have a look in depth at some of the very advanced utilities that come bundled with Windows 7. And I want to start with the event viewer. Now the event viewer stores information on everything that happens in Windows. Although you'll see there's a little star here, there's a little caveat. Now there's going to be some events that can occur on a computer where the system fails so quickly and the system shuts down or restarts so quickly that the event viewer isn't actually able to store that information. That's probably where a blue screen will come in, but even then the event viewer can probably store information on blue screens, and you may find times when the system has restarted or just stopped and that there is no information there. But generally all the information you need is in the event viewer. Now you can open any event to get more information about it, and you'll see in the grey panel in the bottom there's a lot more information, including stop error codes and descriptions of errors themselves. And any information in the event viewer you can export to email to a support person or to read later on or on another computer. Here though, I want to have a look at how we can attach tasks to events, because you can automatically trigger certain tasks to occur on an event. This could be an error, a driver stop, or any event that you want. So let's have a look at this now. Let's have a look now at how we can attach actions to events. Now the easiest way to get into the event viewer is by typing the word event into the search box in the start menu and selecting event viewer from the list of programs when it appears. Now you'll see here in the list summary of administrative events in the middle, it tells us for the last hour, day and week how many critical, error and warning events we've had, along with information and successful audit events. Now we'll discount critical events for the moment, because a critical event will probably result in a system failure of some type that the user is likely to notice. So we'll say that we want to look at just the errors. Now we can see here we've had 2 in the last hour, we've had 4 in the last 24 hours and 6 in the last week. Now let's say it's this service control error that we have identified as being the source of our problem. Now this could be a problem that the user doesn't recognize and doesn't notice until later on. Say perhaps a driver has failed, or a Windows service has failed, or a piece of software has failed, and the user doesn't notice until the next time they go to print a document, attach to the company network, or try and run a piece of software. But we need to know, as and when that event actually occurs, what is happening at that time. We need to know what software that user is running, what else they are doing on their computer to help us diagnose the problem. So we'll double click on this, and this will give us more information here about this error. It'll tell us when it occurred, and it will give us more information, including an error code if there is one. Now you'll see here in the right hand panel there's an option here to attach a task to this event. So we'll click on this. Now we'll give the task a name, so we'll say call it VM error, or VM error 1, and we'll give it a description. So we'll say an intermittent error with the company virtual machine. Now there are 3 different tasks that we can perform here. We can start a program, and we'll talk more about this in a little while. We can send an email, but bearing in mind that you'll need email client software such as Microsoft Outlook installed on a computer. It won't work with webmail. Or we can display a message. Now we're going to have a look here about displaying a message. Now the title of the message is going to be alert, and we can put anything we want. We'll say stop whatever you're doing and call Mike at tech support straight away. Don't touch the keyboard further, as we need information about an error that has just occurred. And that alert message will then appear on the user's screen when the error next occurs, and every time after that as well. Now before we click finish, we'll just tick this box to open the properties dialog for this task, and we'll have a look at some of the other options that are available. We can have the task run whether the user is logged on or not. We can change the privileges with which it runs. We can change what triggers this action here, and we can change the actions themselves. We can add additional ones. We can have a whole series of them. We can edit them. We can delete them, and you can add these up and down the list so that actions occur one after another. So here we could say we want to start another program. Again, as I said, something we're going to look at. So when you're happy with all those settings, then we will press OK there, and now it says it's created the scheduled task VM error 1, and to modify the task, open the task scheduler and you'll see it in there. Now, I spoke there about being able to attach programs to events and start programs, and I want to talk here about a DOS command called wevtutil. Now, you can use this to retrieve information from the event viewer, and you run it from the command prompt, as I've said. So you can use the command prompt to run command.exe, cmd.exe with one of the following switches. Now there are many switches that you can use here, and there's more information on those in a minute. But you can use the /C switch to carry out a command string and stop, or the /K to carry out a command string and then continue. Now, as I've said, you can use wevtutil to output system information in a file from the event viewer, and there's full information on the wevtutil command at this bit.ly address, or if you do a search online for wevtutil, then you'll find information on the Microsoft website. But it's a very useful way of being able to output information from the event viewer itself at the time an event occurs. Then there's the system health report, which I'm going to look at in a little bit more depth in a little while. Now, you can automatically run a system health report from the event viewer, and this can be very useful. Now, you need to be familiar with a PowerShell command, and you can run PowerShell.exe from a task in the event viewer with a command after it. Now, this is the general format of the PowerShell command that you can use to run the system health report automatically when an event or an error occurs. And again, with this, there's more information online, either at this bit.ly address or by searching online for creating a system health report, where you'll find full information and full syntax for this PowerShell command and how you actually use it, if you're not familiar with PowerShell, on the Microsoft website. What I'd like to do now is look at more in depth at performance information and tools. Now here we can get huge amounts of information about the computer, about what's going on in both live formats and formats generally sort of archived with information about the computer. Now you can access performance information tools by typing performance, or perf perhaps, into the search box in the Windows 7 Start menu, which is the easiest way to access it, but you can also access it from the control panel. Now, when it opens, you'll see your Windows Experience Index score information, and this is the default view, but in the blue panel on the left hand side of that window you'll see an Advanced Tools link, and it's this Advanced Tools link that you're going to want to click on. So there's 4 particular bits of information that we can get from performance information and tools, and now we're going to have a live demo, and I'm going to look at each one of these in depth. There's the performance monitor, the resource monitor, system information, and the system health report that I mentioned a little while ago. So now we'll have our demonstration. Okay, let's have a look now at some of the advanced tools in the Performance Information and Tools panel. First one I want to have a look at is the Performance Monitor here. Now, the Performance Monitor allows us to view real-time information about what's going on with our computer. So we have a system summary here, but there's even more information available than that. If we click on the Performance Monitor link in the left-hand panel, we can see a graph that's showing us here by default a red line for the percentage of processor time that's being used. But up on the top we've got a toolbar, and here we've got a green plus button, so we can add all sorts of different graphs to this panel. And you can see here there's a great many covering every aspect of the Windows operating system. Now let's say for instance we want to look at networking. Now there are several ways to do this. We can click on the network interface there and we can see all the information about it below, and we can click add there and we can add all these network interface details to the panel, or we can click the down arrow next to network interface and we can just say, well, let's say we want bytes sent and received on our network connection, so we'll add those. So when you're ready, click OK and we'll turn off the processor time, and we can now see all sorts of information here in real time about what is happening in our computer, and the graphs are neatly color coded, and you can add as many graphs to this as you want, and you can just turn things on and off, and it's still storing the information, but you can turn them on and off to view just the information that you need. So that's the Performance Monitor. Next is the Resource Monitor, which is directly below it in the Advanced Tools. Now the Resource Monitor is kind of the big brother of the Task Manager, which you access from Control-Alt-Delete or by right-clicking on the Windows 7 taskbar. There's all sorts of information here about processors that are running, disk information, network information, but you've also got tabs along the top for the processor, for running services, for your memory as well, for what's being written to the disk and being read from the disk, and what the how many bytes per second are being read, about disk activity there, and all sorts of information about your network activity. And everything has useful graphs here on the right hand panel with more information available still. So the Resource Monitor gives much more information than the Task Manager about what is happening on your computer in real time, and it's an incredibly useful tool. Next, we have the System Information Panel. Now, the System Information Panel is kind of like the SIS Sandra utilities, but it's not quite as in depth. But it will give you an awful lot of information. I mean, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of bits of information on your computer and on what's happening with your computer, and on the hard disk, on the hardware and the software and drivers, and here we can see environment variables. And this information here, this can all be exported from the file menu and sent to a support person or read on another PC or later on. This is general information about your PC. So what if you want information about what's happening in your PC at that moment and want to generate a report on that? Well, here we can generate a system health report. Now, the system health report takes, as it says here, about 60 seconds, but it collates all of this information that we've seen into a single file, which can be viewed on this computer, it can be viewed on any other computer, it can be emailed to a support person, it can be read later. Sometimes it's useful to be able to take a report away, walk away from a problem because you can be too close to it, and sometimes you can't see the wood for the trees. So sometimes it's very useful to be able to take a report away. So we'll just wait for this report to finish creating, and then we'll have a look at just how in-depth it really is, because it is incredibly useful. Should be finished in just a moment, but as is always the way with these things, it takes longer than you hope. Here we are, generating the report. Now, when the report appears, we'll see that it's organised into a whole series of collapsible panels, which gives us our information here. So we've got our main system diagnostics report, our diagnostic results here, which is telling us about device drivers that are disabled here. We have our software configuration panels, and these are all collapsible as well. We've got hardware, CPU, network, disk, memory, and report statistics panels, which give us all sorts of information, and there's a huge wealth of information. All the information that we've seen in those previous panels is included here, and is a snapshot of everything going on in that computer at the time. And it's a huge amount of information, but because it's all in collapsible panels, it's fairly easy for you to be able to go directly to the information that you want. Let's say we've collapsed them all. Let's say we want to look at disk activity here, and we want to look at our physical hard disk, and we want to see what's going on there. So that's the system health report, and again, in the file menu, you can print it, you can send it to someone if you have an email client installed on your PC, such as Microsoft Outlook. It wouldn't work with webmail, but you can save it as a file, and then that can be attached to an email later and sent to a support person. So there's a whole wealth of advanced tools here in Performance Information and Tools. So that's it for this presentation on Advanced Windows 7 Troubleshooting. I'm Mike Halsey. There's much more information available in my book, Troubleshooting Windows 7 Inside Out, from Microsoft Press, and you can also find further help and information on my website, thelongclimb.com. Thank you for watching.